Immediately, I was disappointed. The first thing that came to mind is that we've only just been legalized in New York, and this is the kind of thing that sets us back in other places. Hawaii have just turned us down. The tourism board don't want the UFC to come there because, to quote them, it brings the wrong kind of people to the islands. Now, Conor McGregor's just reinforced that. There are also places in, closer to our region that are restricted. I mean, we've never had a show in France. We struggle with parts of Scandinavia. And Conor McGregor is giving these people evidence for a case against us, and he's not appreciating the fact that this very sport is what allows him to have the lifestyle that he's had. I just thought to myself, it's foolish behavior, it's reckless behavior, it's immature, and then I thought to myself, it's not well thought out. But then I thought, well, he doesn't want to fight either. I mean, he doesn't want to fight anyway. He's not fought in some time. He doesn't seem to be showing any interest in trying to make a match. And, his belt's just been stripped, so that's going to be upsetting to him. And he's going to have to fight Khabib to get it back, so maybe a suspension will suit him.
I mean, the weird thing is this loyalty issue around Artem Lobov, because not everyone from the UFC has condemned him. I mean, if you look at Daniel Cormier, he backed to his actions. He's protecting his guy. I think Michael Bisping has said something similar as well, Nick. So not everyone is criticising him.
Nate Diaz too, obviously Conor's big rival from the UFC. He actually defended Conor McGregor, and I kind of get that. If a young boy's in the schoolyard getting bullied by a gang of other boys and his own friends run over to defend him, you would kind of see that as just. You would kind of see that as loyalty and friends sticking together. There's an element of that involved, but we're grown men. We're grown men, and the fact that you're flying from one side of the Atlantic to another to then throw things at another man. If you're going to travel all that way, great. I'll tell you what to do. Sit ringside. And when Khabib wins on Saturday night and lifts your belt above his head, climb inside their octagon and get on the microphone and demand the immediate fight with him straight away. Don't throw a dolly out a window. Don't smash windows and ruin other people's opportunity to make money. There was ultimately 6 fighters that missed out directly associated with Conor McGregor's actions at the weekend. 6 people that missed out on not only wages, but the chance to fight for a bonus, the chance to further their own careers, the chance to fight on pay-per-view in America, on live TV in New York. These are huge, significant moments in these people's career. And yet Conor McGregor is just completely blasé, goes in there. But I get what Dan was, I think, hinting at there as well is, let's look at the bigger picture here. There's something a bit more going on. When you watch that footage, there's a lot of security guys kind of trying to usher Conor away from the bus, yet nobody actually tackles him. There's nobody actually there saying stop. Conor makes no effort really to actually get on the bus. He just wants to throw things at the bus. And let's also look at the fact that this is a pay-per-view event, UFC's pay-per-view. All these numbered events are the pay-per-view events in America. And for the pay-per-view events, we get an embedded show. Every day, for the 5 days leading up to the fight, when the fighters arrive in the hotel, we get an embedded show, which is like a 20-minute long YouTube video, and it tells the story of what's gone on that day in the final 4 days, counting up to these big events. And the final episode 4, all the content was Conor's antics. It was all the content from there, and it did over 4 million views. So look at that how you will.
Because that's it. The initial reaction from Dana White, who's the president of the UFC, was one of fury. I can't believe he did this. And then suddenly, Dan, the UFC are using it as a promotional tool.
Well, I mean, it is a promotion. The UFC are going to lean on whatever draws interest to the card. The fact that we lost a bunch of fights off the card, can only be really helped by the fact that there was such a media fanfare around it. I mean, Ariel Helwani didn't sleep for about a week. Everybody was on it. Everybody wanted to know what was going on. It doesn't change the fact that it's bad for the sport. It doesn't change the fact that several fighters were injured. I mean, we don't know what's going on with Ray Borg. It was said he had glass in his eyes. Michael Chiesa was cut. Rose was clearly shaken up as well. I mean, her fight could have gone terribly after what happened because, everybody processes these things in different ways. And when you're cutting weight, when you are feeling weakened, you are more sensitive. And I just, I feel like the whole thing was, Conor McGregor knew that he could get a lot of attention by doing something like that. He also knew that it would maybe exclude him from competition for a little while to buy him a bit of time to get ready to face someone like Khabib. Conor McGregor wasn't there to stick up for Artem Lobov. He was there to make a scene. The right thing to do in that scenario, and at any martial artist, if your teammate and your friend contacts you, If Jimmy Wallhead was on the other side of the world and he called me up and he was like, look, these guys are hassling me at every opportunity they get, and I had the money and the people around me to get on a plane and come and support them, I don't break in and cause a riot and start attacking people. I go and stand next to my friend. I stand next to him and I support them. And as you said, Nick, the best thing for him to do would be to make himself available to face Khabib.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? If we talk about punishments here, I mean, the biggest punishment is fighting Khabib.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people on the outside, their first action was, people who don't really know the sport too well. I got a lot of people contacting me and messaging me saying, any other sport, this guy gets sacked, so why are the UFC not sacking him? And I was saying, well, this has not done anything in terms of bringing eyeballs and bringing attention to the UFC brand. It's only going to increase. Conor McGregor, okay, may not be a role model in many people's eyes, and he may have lost a lot of fans in his actions here. But the UFC, they're a promotional business, and the fact that I was on BBC Radio 4 over the last few days and every other channel in the world and everybody's talking about it and it becomes a viral sensation and that episode of Embedded does 4 million views, that's good business. It's good for the UFC. Whether they like it or not, it's good business. Because they are in the Conor McGregor business. I'm telling you, if the UFC, and it would never happen, but if the UFC were to sack Conor McGregor over these actions, because believe you me, if it was just Artem Lobov, he'd have been gone by now. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. He'd have been sacked and you will never see him again. And I'd be surprised, actually, if Artem Lobov does actually get back in the UFC. But Conor's a different kettle of fish. He's transcended the sport. He's worth too much money. And if they did sack him, every single promotion on the planet, not just in mixed martial arts, but in boxing as well, will be banging on Conor's door with a massive opportunity, a massive open checkbooks. And if Conor McGregor wanted to start his own promotion, let's say the UFC sacked me and said, okay, I'm going to start Notorious MMA. Straight away, that would be the second biggest MMA promotion on the planet. And as soon as he did one fight with him in it, it would be the biggest promotion on the planet. It'd be bigger than the UFC. It's crazy.
So is this, Dan? Do you think it's a pathological problem with him not being the centre of attention? Do you think this was all spiralled out, knowing slightly that he'd get a lot of attention, slightly that his stock would go up, but slightly due to the fact that he was no longer a champion? Because as soon as that fight with Khabib and Al Iaquinta, as it happened in the end, happened, he was no longer the lightweight champion. He was no longer the featherweight champion. He was no longer a champion.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of those things. I think it's a combination of him no longer being able to legitimately call himself a champion. I think it's a combination of the lightweight title being available to win and Conor McGregor not being a part of that. And yeah, I mean, I think his ego's gotten out of control. He's always been a big personality, and that's why we like him, because he's fascinating to watch. And there's no doubt he's done lots of positive things for the sport because of the eyes that he's drawn to the sport. But that big personality needs feeding. It needs attention. It requires views on Instagram and YouTube and all these other things, because that's where he feels he's validated. Now, see, the thing is, what else drives him? He's got 100 million in the bank. He's got more offers on the table than probably anybody else on the planet. So he no longer has to strive to make money. He no longer has to force himself to get up in the morning and do anything. So what drives you then? You've got a lot of people around you that you can now afford to bankroll, so they're not going to say anything against you. You can afford to pile them all onto a private jet and fly over and start acting like a bunch of thugs. And like you said, Nick, if he branches off and starts his own organization up, then you are right. It would be a massive detriment to the UFC's fan base and ability to draw attention to a pay-per-view. But is he responsible enough to do that? We talked about how he hung all this on the fact that he was defending his teammate. But when he launched himself into the cage at Bellator and pushed Mark Goddard, he also said that was for the benefit of the fighter that was being knocked out. But he was banging into that fighter when he was trying to get to Mark Goddard. I feel like that's just an excuse.
So is it a pattern of behaviour then? I mean, you used to fight on Cage Warriors. That's the last promotion that Conor was on before he made it to the UFC. Did you fight at the same time as him, though? You were there at the same time?
No, I was there. I was there a few years before Conor. We actually was never on the same. I don't even think we were signed to Cage Warriors at the same time. I'd already progressed to the UFC by that point.
What was he like back then?
Octagon News.